To prepare for the wedding, my son hired me to be a housekeeper for his fiancée's family. My name is Elena. I am a housekeeper. This job has been with me for 20 years, ever since the day my husband passed away, leaving me with a single son to raise, Antoine. My life was simple, revolving around two things: working hard and securing his future. I had nothing else but him, and I never needed anything else. One day in April, Antoine asked to meet me at a small cafe on the slopes of Montmartre. He said he had something important to tell me, and his voice over the phone sounded serious. I thought he was about to announce a promotion or that he had bought a new apartment. I had a smile ready to congratulate him. I was wrong. The story I am about to tell is not an easy one to hear, but it is the truth from beginning to end. It is what really happened. And it all started that afternoon. Over a cup of cold coffee, we sat at a small table by the window, watching the stream of people passing by on the sidewalk. Antoine wore an expensive suit, something I knew he had worked very hard to afford, but his tie was slightly crooked. He looked restless, not his usual self. His hand continuously stirred his coffee, though he had not added any sugar. I waited in silence. I had spent a lifetime learning to be patient with him. After a long moment, as if he had gathered enough courage, he put the spoon down and looked directly at me. "Mother, I am getting married." In that instant, a feeling of warmth and relief washed over me. All my earlier worries vanished. I smiled, a genuine smile. "Is that so, Antoine? That is wonderful. I am so happy for you." I leaned forward slightly, my heart full of excitement. "What is she like? What about her family? Tell me everything." However, he did not mirror my enthusiasm. His expression remained tense, even heavier than before. He took a deep breath. "There is a problem. I lied to her family." The smile froze on my lips. All joy came to an abrupt halt. He continued, his voice lowering as if afraid the people at the next table would overhear. "I told them that you are the Countess de Valois, a descendant of an old noble family that has fallen on hard times, now living in seclusion due to a serious illness." The name meant nothing to me. I had never heard it before. I just sat there, looking at my son, trying to understand what he had just said. I slowly looked down at my hands resting on the table. They were rough, with some knuckles swollen from arthritis developed from working in damp conditions for too long. My skin was calloused. These hands had scrubbed countless floors and washed endless loads of laundry so that Antoine could have the suit he was wearing and the life he desired. These were not the hands of a countess. Antoine no longer dared to look at me. He stared at the floor, his voice nearly breaking. "I am sorry, Mother. I am truly sorry. But because of this, you cannot come to the wedding." That was the most important thing. I would not be there. My chest tightened, then became hollow. The lie, no matter how absurd, did not hurt me as much as this single sentence. All the years of hard work, all the sacrifices, seemed to lead only to this moment. The moment my very existence became a problem to be concealed. I would not get to see him on his happiest day. I saw his shoulders tremble slightly. He was crying, but trying to hold it back. I realized he was not only feeling guilty, he was also terrified. He was afraid of losing everything. His fear was written all over his face, in his every gesture. And when I saw that, my own pain seemed to fade in importance. I reached my hand across the table and placed it on his clenched fist. His skin was ice cold. A long silence stretched between us, filled only by the noise of the surrounding cafe. Finally, I was the one who spoke. My voice sounded calm, so calm that it surprised even me. "All right. I will be your sick countess." 2 days after our conversation at the cafe, Antoine called me. He said he had arranged a job for me, a job right inside the Dubois family's penthouse. He said this was the only way for me to be close, and also a way to make his lie plausible. If anyone asked, he would say I was a former housekeeper of the family, someone he trusted. I did not argue. I just said okay. The penthouse did not feel like a home. It was more like a museum, cold and formal, with marble floors that were always shining and enormous glass windows looking out directly at the Eiffel Tower. The head housekeeper handed me a gray uniform and showed me my duties. I was not allowed to clean the master bedroom. My tasks were to dust the living rooms, polish the silverware, and keep all glass surfaces free of fingerprints. It was a job that demanded meticulousness and silence. Every day, I wore the gray uniform they gave me, and my existence as Antoine's mother seemed to be swallowed by it. I became Elena, the housekeeper. On the third day, I met Charlotte. She walked into the living room while I was wiping a glass table. She wore a white silk dress and looked beautiful and elegant. I bowed my head in greeting, but she smiled and came closer. "Hello," she said, her voice very friendly. "You must be new, aren't you?" "I'm Charlotte." "Yes, miss," I replied, my eyes still fixed on the cleaning cloth in my hand. "Please do not call me miss. Just Charlotte is fine," she said, sitting down on a nearby sofa. "Oh, I have such a headache. Everything for the wedding is so chaotic." She began to talk about choosing flowers, the guest list, how her wedding dress needed a few alterations. She spoke naturally, as if confiding in a close friend. I just stood there, listening and occasionally nodding. She was kind. That made everything even more difficult. A few times, Antoine passed through the room while I was working. The first time, our eyes met for just a moment. I saw the color drain from his face. A look of anguish was clearly visible. But he immediately regained his composure, nodded to Charlotte, and walked straight past, pretending I was not there. The times after that, he did not even look in my direction. He walked past me as if I were a lamp or a painting on the wall. I continued with my work. I wiped the fingerprints from the glass. I polished the silver forks until I could see my reflection in them. I vacuumed the expensive Persian rug that he would soon walk on as the son-in-law of this family. I became a ghost in that house. I cleaned my son's world so that he could shine without me. I had one day off each week. Usually I would stay home to clean my small apartment or go to the market. But that week, I did not want to stay within my four walls. I just walked, with no particular destination, through streets I rarely visited. It was then that I saw a small antique shop, nestled between a bookstore and a cheese shop. I am not the type of person who pays attention to places like this. They belong to another world. But something in the display window made me stop. It was a silver brooch. It was not large, shaped like a curling leaf. The silver was tarnished with age, but the veins on the leaf were still sharp and intricate. I do not know why, but I could not take my eyes off it. I stood there for a long time before deciding to go inside. The air in the shop was thick with the smell of old wood and paper. An elderly man with round glasses looked up at me, then back down at his book. I went straight to the glass case and pointed to the brooch. "Sir, how much is this?" I asked. He looked at me over his glasses, then at the item. He stated a number. It was a large number. It was almost all the money I had managed to save over the past 2 years. The money I had set aside in case of illness or to fix the leaking roof of my apartment. I should have said thank you and walked away immediately. That is what a rational person would do. But I did not. I stood still, my mind blank. I just thought about the wedding. I thought about how I would not be there. I would not be able to give my daughter-in-law a gift. Not even the smallest one. I would not be able to give them my blessing. I would just be an invisible housekeeper. A secret not to be revealed. And then, I made my decision. I opened my purse. I took out the money, counting each bill carefully on the counter. The shopkeeper looked at me with surprise. I placed the stack of cash down. "I will take it." He wrapped the brooch in a small dark blue velvet box. Holding the box in my hand, I felt no regret, only a strange sense of peace. I could not attend the wedding, but a part of me had to be there. The wedding day arrived. The penthouse was louder and more chaotic than ever. Hairstylists, Makeup artists and photographers moved about everywhere. I was tasked with bringing a light breakfast and tea to the bride's room. I did not complain. This was the only chance I had. I knocked on the door and entered. Charlotte was sitting in front of a mirror, a makeup artist working on her face. The room was filled with light and the scent of perfume. The magnificent wedding dress hung on a special rack in the corner. I placed the tray on a small table, then turned to tidy up a few minor things to buy myself more time. My heart was pounding. The small velvet box was in my apron pocket, a dead weight. When the makeup artist paused to get something, I knew I had to act. I quickly moved to Charlotte's dressing table, which was cluttered with powder boxes, lipsticks, and sparkling bottles. I carefully took out the box and placed it in a hidden corner, but where she would still see it. My hand trembled slightly. Once it was done, I immediately returned to my cleaning, trying to act normal. A moment later, Charlotte returned to the dressing table. She saw the box right away. She picked it up, a curious look on her face. "Whose is this?" she wondered aloud. But no one in the room answered. She opened the box. Her eyes fell upon the silver brooch. She said nothing for a few seconds, just silently admiring it. I stood in the corner of the room, holding my breath, my heart hammering against my ribs. I felt as if all eyes were on me, though in reality, no one was paying me any mind. Then, Charlotte smiled. It was not a polite, social smile. It was warm and held a certain depth. She picked up the brooch, trying it against her elaborately styled hair. "It's beautiful," she said, her eyes still fixed on her reflection in the mirror. Then she added softly, her voice low, as if it came from someone who understands me. That sentence startled me. I quickly bowed my head, pretending to focus on wiping a non-existent spot on the floor. My heart raced. Could she know? Or was it just a passing comment? I did not dare to look up. I just wanted to leave the room as quickly as possible. I quietly gathered my things and stepped out, closing the door behind me. On the day of the ceremony, I was given the day off. It was a delicate way of ensuring I would not be there. Mr. and Mrs. Dubois, along with all the permanent staff, went to the church. Only I and a few hourly workers remained in the penthouse to prepare for the evening reception. The vast house suddenly fell strangely silent. I finished my work early, then went back to the small staff room behind the kitchen. The room contained only a single bed, a table, and a chair. I sat down and took out the old tablet Antoine had bought me several years ago. He had taught me how to watch live events online. I searched for the name of the church and the service. A link appeared. At first, the image was a little blurry, but then it came into sharp focus. I was looking inside the magnificent cathedral where my son was about to be married. The camera panned across the pews, showing elegantly dressed guests and lavish floral arrangements everywhere. Everything was perfect. Then the music began. The church doors opened. Charlotte appeared, arm in arm with her father. She looked breathtaking in her pure white wedding gown. The camera zoomed in on her face. Her smile was radiant. And then I saw it. Nestled neatly in her high-pinned hair, glittering under the church lights, was the silver leaf brooch. It was there. A part of me was there, right beside my son, in the most important moment of his life. The camera shifted to Antoine, waiting at the altar. He wore a black tuxedo and looked so handsome and mature. His face was a mixture of happiness and nervousness. He watched Charlotte approach, and I saw the love in his eyes. It was a look of pure sincerity. I sat alone in that small room, miles away from the ceremony, staring at the screen. I saw them exchange rings. I heard them say their vows. I watched them kiss to the applause of the crowd. A smile formed on my lips. But it was a sad smile. A single tear rolled down my cheek. I quickly wiped it away. I was not allowed to cry. The ailing countess would not cry. She would only watch silently from a distance. The evening reception was held in the main hall of the penthouse. Everything was extravagant and splendid. I and the other servers moved silently between the tables, pouring champagne and clearing empty plates. I tried not to look at Antoine, not to look at Charlotte. I just focused on my work. Being invisible was the safest way. After dinner, it was time for the speeches. Mr. Dubois said a few words, and then it was Antoine's turn. He stepped up to the small stage, a glass in his hand. He looked very confident. He thanked his parents-in-law and his friends. Then he paused for a moment, looking down at Charlotte with a tender gaze. "I am truly grateful," he said, his voice filled with emotion. "I thank this family for welcoming and accepting an orphan like me into their family." An orphan. The word echoed in my head. The tray of glasses in my hand trembled. I stood frozen in a corner of the room. He had said it. In front of everyone. He had officially erased me. Applause erupted throughout the room. Everyone was moved by his words. I saw Madame Dubois lift a handkerchief to dab at her eyes. Only Charlotte did not applaud right away. She looked at Antoine, her expression unreadable. Then she smiled. A very strange smile. She stood up and clapped. Her applause was sharp and deliberate. Then, to everyone's surprise, she walked onto the stage to stand beside Antoine. Antoine seemed a bit taken aback by his wife's actions. He wrapped his arm around Charlotte's waist, smiling at the guests, but Charlotte gently removed his hand. She reached up to her hair and carefully unpinned the silver brooch. She held it high for everyone to see. The stage lights caught it, making it sparkle. "The most precious gift I received today," Charlotte began, her voice clear and ringing through the room, "was not from family. It came from someone very special, and that person is right here, in this room." A murmur started to spread through the room. People looked around, curious. I saw Antoine stiffen. The smile vanished from his lips. His face turned pale. He looked at Charlotte, then shot a quick glance toward the corner where I was standing. It was just a fleeting look, but I could see the panic in it. Charlotte did not look at anyone else. She looked directly at her husband. "Would you?" she said, her voice still calm but carrying a heavy weight, "like to tell everyone who gave me this brooch?" Silence enveloped the room. All the chatter, all the music, all the sounds disappeared. Every eye was on Antoine. He stood there, under the spotlight, looking utterly alone. He did not answer. The room was dead silent. I stood in my corner, the tray of glasses in my hands beginning to tremble. I wanted to turn away. I wanted to run from there, but my feet felt as if they were nailed to the floor. I could not move. Antoine stood motionless under the lights. I saw beads of sweat forming on his forehead. His lips moved, but no sound came out. He looked at Charlotte, then down at the floor, as if searching for an escape that did not exist. Time seemed to crawl. Every second of silence made the air heavier. Charlotte remained still. She did not push him. She just stood there, the brooch still in her hand, and waited. Her patience was more terrifying than any accusation. Finally, Antoine could not bear it any longer. He brought a hand up to cover his face. His shoulders began to shake. A choked sob escaped him. In front of everyone, my son broke down and cried. His voice was shattered. No longer words, but something close to a whimper. "That person is my mother, Elena." He said my name. A murmur spread through the room, this time louder and clearer. A few people began to turn their heads, looking around. Their gazes swept over the serving area. And finally, they found me. One person, then two, then all of them. I felt hundreds of eyes turning towards me. Burning, judgmental. I could only bow my head, staring down at my old shoes. The charade was truly over. Just as the chaos was about to erupt, Mr. Dubois stood up. He was tall and had a very commanding presence. All the whispering stopped at once. He did not look at the crying Antoine. He did not look at Charlotte. He looked directly at me. From across the room, The one thing I will not tolerate in this family, he said, his voice deep and clear, is dishonesty. My chest tightened. I knew this was my cue to leave. But then he continued. And this time he looked out at the entire room. But today, it is not just Antoine, but all of us who must face the truth. I do not remember how I left that party. I only remember putting down the tray, going out the back door, and just walking into the night. When I got back to my small apartment, I did not turn on the lights. I just sat down in my old chair in the darkness. And what had happened replayed over and over in my mind. My name. Antoine's crying. The eyes of everyone. A long time later, I heard a knock on the door. The knock was gentle, but in the silence of the apartment, it sounded very loud. I did not want to open it. I did not want to see anyone. But the knocking came again. Persistent. Finally, I stood up and went to the door. Antoine and Charlotte were standing there. Antoine looked pathetic. His eyes were swollen. His elegant tuxedo now disheveled. As soon as he saw me, he said nothing, almost pushing past me to get inside. Then, he fell to his knees on my old tiled floor. Mother, I am sorry. Mother, I am so sorry. He just kept repeating those words, his voice hoarse and broken. I just stood there, looking down at my son kneeling at my feet. I felt nothing. No anger. No forgiveness. Just an emptiness. Charlotte quietly followed him in and closed the door. She was still in her wedding dress, but she did not look tired at all. She was unusually calm. She walked forward, not looking at Antoine, but looking directly at me. I have known for a long time. Her voice was very calm, but also very firm. I did not understand. She went on, as if answering the question in my head. I knew from the way he looked at you, the first time I saw you in the living room. That is not how a man looks at his housekeeper. I remained silent, but I chose to remain silent. Charlotte continued. I did not want to embarrass him. I wanted to give him the chance. I waited for him to be the one to tell the truth. I looked at Charlotte. I looked into her clear, intelligent eyes. And suddenly, I understood everything. I was stunned into silence. She was not some naive girl who had been deceived. She knew everything. She had known from the very beginning. She had seen the brooch and understood its meaning. She had heard Antoine's lie on the stage, and she had waited. She had orchestrated that very moment. I realized my daughter-in-law had never been naive. She was the one who had been in control of it all. She was not a character caught in the play. She was the one who brought down the curtain. I stood there, trying to process what Charlotte had just said. Everything in my head was turned upside down. The person I thought I needed to protect turned out to be stronger than anyone. Antoine was still kneeling on the floor, his crying having subsided into quiet, choked sobs. Charlotte took another step toward me. She looked at me, and this time, the firmness in her eyes was gone. It had softened. From now on, you do not have to be invisible anymore, she said, her voice very gentle. Then she reached out her arms and hugged me. A firm hug. The silk of her wedding dress pressed against me, soft and a little cool. I stood rigidly for a moment, not knowing what to do. It had been so long since anyone had hugged me like that. And then she whispered, words meant only for me to hear. Hello, Mother. Those two words. My whole body trembled. An emotion I had suppressed for so many years, so many days, suddenly surged forth. The tears began to flow. This time, I made no attempt to hide them. I stood there, in my small apartment, hearing those two words for the first time in years. 6 months later, the Dubois family hosted another party. Not a wedding reception. This time, the sign at the entrance read, "A welcome for family." It was not a large party, only for the closest friends and family. I was not wearing a gray uniform. I wore the most beautiful dress I owned. Charlotte had picked it out for me herself. Antoine stood beside me. The look of fear and torment was gone. He looked peaceful. When all the guests had arrived, he took my hand. His hand was warm and steady. He led me to the center of the room where everyone was gathered. Charlotte stood right beside him, smiling at me. Antoine cleared his throat. "I would like to introduce you all to someone," he said, his voice loud and clear. "This is my mother, Elena." He looked at me and smiled. A real smile. I had lost the role of the countess, but I had found my son again and gained a daughter I had never dared to dream of.